This island has no rivers, no natural resources, and sits directly in the path of the Atlantic's worst hurricanes. It is, by every geographic measure, a place that should have zero economic value. And yet, when a hurricane destroys Florida, when wildfires burn through California, when an earthquake levels a city in Japan, the checks that rebuild all of it are being written from a 21 square mile rock that most people couldn't find on a map. This is the story of Bermuda. Ask anyone where Bermuda is, and they'll point somewhere near the Caribbean, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, a warm tropical sea full of islands. Wrong, Bermuda is not in the Caribbean. It's not even close to the Caribbean. It sits completely alone in the North Atlantic Ocean, one of the most hostile, unforgiving stretches of water on Earth. Here's how isolated we're actually talking. The nearest land isn't another island, it's Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. 650 miles to the west, nothing in between, not a single rock, not a reef, just open ocean. Sail east from Bermuda and you won't see land again until you crash into the coast of Morocco. Over 3,000 miles away. No neighbors, no archipelago, no shelter. Just deep blue water in every direction. So, how does an island just appear in the middle of nowhere? And more importantly, why would anyone ever choose to live there? The answer starts 15,000 feet beneath the ocean's surface. Millions of years ago, a geological hotspot punched through the Earth's crust at the bottom of the Atlantic. Lava poured out for millennia, built a colossal underwater mountain, eventually broke the surface and formed an island. Then the volcano went quiet, and it slowly started to sink. But as it sank, something remarkable happened. Microscopic marine organisms moved in and began building coral reefs around the rim of the submerging crater. Over successive ice ages, sea levels rising and falling, those reefs were exposed to the air, battered by wind and waves, crushed into fine sand, and compacted under their own weight into solid rock, limestone. So, when you stand on Bermuda today, you are not standing on volcanic rock. You are standing on the fossilized remains of millions of years of coral reef, layered on top of a drowned volcano that has been dead longer than humans have walked the Earth. It's one of the most extraordinary geological stories on the planet, and it comes with one catastrophic flaw that should have made human life here completely impossible. Limestone is porous, extremely porous. When it rains on Bermuda, the water doesn't collect. It doesn't form rivers or streams or lakes. It sinks, straight down through the rock, hits the bottom, mixes with the surrounding ocean, becomes undrinkable salt water. There are no rivers in Bermuda, no lakes, no underground aquifers, not a single natural source of fresh water anywhere beneath the island. Think about what that means for a civilization trying to take root here. You are 650 miles from the nearest mainland. Ships aren't coming daily. You can't grow crops without water. You can't build a growing population without water. By every rule of survival, this island should be empty. But the people who ended up here didn't leave. They looked at their rooftops and engineered one of the most quietly brilliant solutions in architectural history. Every house in Bermuda was built with a distinctive stepped limestone roof, painted brilliant white. The steps slow the rainwater down, catching every drop. The white paint reflects UV rays and purifies the water as it falls. It travels down the steps and funnels directly into large underground cisterns carved beneath each home. Not decorative, not traditional. Survival. Built into the bones of every single building on the island. 400 years later, it is still written into Bermuda's building code. Every house must catch its own rainwater this way. Those gleaming white-stepped rooftops in every postcard of Bermuda, that's not architecture. That's a civilization that refused to die. But solving the water problem was only half the battle, because they still had no economy, no resources, and no obvious reason for the rest of the world to pay any attention to them at all. For most of human history, no one wanted anything to do with this place. Unlike the Caribbean islands, home to thriving indigenous civilizations for thousands of years, Bermuda sat completely empty. Its isolation was so extreme, so total, that no human had ever found it. When Spanish explorer Juan de Bermudez first spotted it in 1505, there was no one there. The Spanish could have claimed it. They had the ships, they had the power, but sailors who got close quickly learned about the hidden coral reefs ringing the island. reefs that ripped wooden hulls apart without a single warning. And the survivors who made it to shore came back with stories. Demonic shrieking from the forests at night. The Spanish named it the Isle of Devils and never went back. The demons were the mating calls of the native cahao bird, a seabird with an eerie, wailing cry that carries far in the dark, mixed with the grunts of wild pigs left behind by earlier shipwrecks. But perception was reality. And the perception was, cursed island, stay away. It took a catastrophe to finally force humans onto Bermuda. In 1609, an English ship called the Sea Venture was crossing the Atlantic, carrying 150 colonists toward the new settlement at Jamestown, Virginia. A massive hurricane caught them mid-ocean. The ship was taking on water fast. It was going down. The admiral spotted Bermuda and made a decision. He drove the ship deliberately into the reefs, a controlled wreck. The vessel was destroyed, but all 150 people survived. They spent 10 months on the island, built 2 new ships from the wreckage, ate wild pigs, drank rainwater off stepped limestone roofs. And when the time came to finally sail on to Jamestown, a small group of men made a quiet decision. They weren't leaving. By 1612, England officially colonized Bermuda, a civilization built by accident on a cursed island in the middle of nowhere had officially begun. The early settlers tried the obvious things first. Tobacco, the cash crop of the era. Virginia was building fortunes on it. Surely Bermuda could do the same. 2 problems. The island is 21 square miles, smaller than many cities' downtown districts. And the limestone soil is too shallow, too nutrient poor to support agriculture at any meaningful scale. Bermuda couldn't compete, not even close. So, they turned to the ocean. They used the native Bermuda cedar, famously dense, rot-resistant, built for the sea, to construct fast, nimble ships that became renowned across the Atlantic world. They dominated the regional salt trade. They ran supply routes across the Caribbean. And for a time, they turned to privateering, state-sanctioned piracy, legally intercepting enemy vessels and taking their cargo. For a while, it worked beautifully. A tiny island with nothing was punching far above its weight. Then the age of sail ended, steam replaced cedar, privateering was outlawed, and the routes that had kept Bermuda relevant slowly disappeared. Once again, the island was staring at economic collapse with no obvious way forward. What happened next was one of the most audacious economic pivots in the history of any nation on Earth. To understand how Bermuda built its modern empire, one concept matters above everything else: reinsurance. It sounds like the driest word in the English language. But reinsurance is the multi-trillion-dollar safety net that stops the global economy from collapsing every time the world has a bad year. Here is how it works. A Category 5 hurricane makes landfall in Florida. One insurance company suddenly owes money on 100,000 claims simultaneously. Flooded homes, destroyed businesses, total losses across entire counties. The payout could reach 50, 60, 70 billion dollars. But that insurance company does not have $70 billion. No insurance company does. If they paid everything at once, they'd be wiped out. The homeowners would get nothing. The reconstruction would never happen. So they buy their own insurance. They transfer a massive portion of their catastrophic risk to a separate company, a reinsurer, in exchange for a share of their premiums. The reinsurer absorbs the worst-case scenario. They collect steady income in the calm years. Insurance for insurance companies, and the world's reinsurance industry, the entities that backstop catastrophic risk for every major insurer on the planet, is overwhelmingly concentrated in one place: Hamilton, Bermuda, a capital city with a population of roughly 1,000 people. How did that happen? After a string of catastrophic Atlantic hurricanes in the 1980s exposed just how dangerously undercapitalized the global insurance industry really was, investors needed to build massive new reinsurance capacity, and they needed to do it fast. Bermuda had no corporate income tax, protected by its unique status as a self-governing British overseas territory with total control over its own financial laws. It sat geographically close to the United States, the single most expensive, most disaster-exposed real estate market on the planet, and new companies could get licensed and operational in weeks rather than months. Capital flooded in, companies set up in Hamilton. And within a decade, a rock with no resources had quietly become the financial backstop of the entire catastrophe market. Today, when a hurricane tears through the Gulf Coast, when an earthquake flattens a city in Japan, when wildfire seasons consume hundreds of thousands of acres in California, it is very often Bermudian companies writing the checks that fund the recovery. After the worst recent Atlantic hurricane seasons, Bermudian reinsurers covered roughly 30 cents of every dollar paid out in American reconstruction claims. A 21-square-mile island with no rivers is functioning as the world's disaster relief fund. But here is where the story takes a turn that almost defies belief. Climate change is accelerating. Ocean temperatures are rising. And warm ocean water is the exact fuel that powers Atlantic hurricanes. Storms are getting stronger, more frequent, more destructive. By every logical assumption, this should be catastrophic for a country whose entire economy is built on paying out disaster claims. More disasters, bigger payouts. That's bankruptcy. It is doing the exact opposite. As global risks increase, insurance companies are more desperate than ever to offload their catastrophic exposure. Demand for Bermuda's reinsurance products has surged. And because the underlying risk is genuinely higher, Bermudian firms can charge dramatically higher premiums for the same coverage. The worse the global climate picture gets, the more valuable Bermuda becomes. The island that was literally wrecked into existence by a hurricane is now getting wealthier every time a hurricane gets stronger. To price that risk precisely, Bermudian firms employ the world's best climate scientists, meteorologists, and quantitative analysts, building mathematical models that predict not just whether a storm will hit, but exactly where, at what intensity, and what the resulting damage will look like street by street, not gambling. Precisely calculated bets on the future of the world's climate. And they are extraordinarily good at it. So, what does all of this mean for the 64,000 people who actually live on the island? On paper, extraordinary things. GDP per capita consistently above $100,000. Well-maintained roads, resilient infrastructure, a government with the actual budget to function well. When a hurricane hits Bermuda itself, the island barely flinches. Those white-stepped limestone houses are built for exactly this. The cisterns are underground. The power grid is designed to recover fast. The architecture that was invented to solve the water problem turns out to also be nearly hurricane-proof. But there is a catch, and it is a serious one. Because Bermuda is a 21-square-mile limestone rock in the middle of the Atlantic, everything must arrive by ship or plane. Every liter of fuel, every piece of timber, every car, every appliance, almost every item of food on every grocery store shelf traveled hundreds of miles of open ocean to get there. Add to that a massive influx of global financiers and reinsurance executives, all competing for property on an island with 21 square miles of total land and strict limits on foreign ownership. And the result is one of the highest costs of living anywhere on the planet. A $100,000 salary in Bermuda does not make you wealthy. It barely makes you middle class. So Bermuda is, in the end, a complete geographic paradox. No water, no resources, no farmland, settled by accident, built on disaster. Positioned directly in the firing line of the Atlantic's worst storms. And yet, through architectural ingenuity, maritime resilience, and the most audacious financial pivot in the history of any small nation, it turned every single one of those curses into the foundation of its wealth. The island nobody could survive on became the island the rest of the world can't survive without.